I want to take the privilege of jumping around a little bit. We have Senator Eklund here tonight, which we certainly appreciate you coming. We have some questions for you. Hopefully you can clarify some things for us. I'd like to give you the opportunity that you've got going, you'd like to present to us. If we're unaware or not questioned about it, I'd be glad to hear those as well. So, again, we appreciate you coming. We know your time is valuable, so we're going to defer to you at this point. So, two questions we had. The first was the consolidation of local income tax collection by the state. Governor Kasich has introduced. And we as a council discussed it independently. I think we passed a resolution prior to me becoming mayor in opposition to that. And I know my feeling on the fact is that a small village, we don't see value. I think that if you look at the bill from a state perspective, there may be value in bigger metropolitan areas, but we see it as a detriment to our village, and obviously that's our concern, is the detriment of our village. And the other issue was the reduction of council members, the number of council members. And I guess I'm not sure the logic behind that, so maybe you can help us understand that as well, but we're opposed to both. So.
Well, let me think then. How do I feel? No, first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to be here and council. It's a great opportunity, and that's number one. I'm just thrilled to pieces to be here. Number two, I want to compliment you and your village and all the folks here for doing something that I have found is not as rare as I thought it was when I became a senator. To hear a lot of the media talk these days, one might think that people across Ohio are basically throwing up their hands, giving up on our way of government, looking to turn everything upside down and change it, throw it all out into the street. You hear about the Arab Spring, you hear about Occupy Wall Street, everybody wants to change the way America operates. So you would think. But what I have found is that is not, in fact, at all true. That people remain engaged in the processes of government. People believe in our way of government. People are enthused when they have issues that they're passionate about. They reach out and they engage the government to try to do some good. And they genuinely believe, as they should, that given the opportunity, they can make the government work for them instead of against them. And your resolution in particular, as I read it a couple of days ago, and the efforts and the outreach that you're making to your government to try to get your government to be responsive to what you need, is the kind of participatory, active citizenship that is what really makes America great. We can have the greatest system in the world, but without folks like you doing the kinds of things that you're doing here, we're all basically cast to the tide. And I appreciate it, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. Philosophically, my view of the world is that any government operates best when it's closest to the ground. I like to say that in the late summer, early fall of the year, every year I sit down at my house and I make myself a list of things I have to do in the fall to prepare the house for winter time, right? And it gets to be sometimes a pretty long list. Some things are on there every year, some things change. But you don't know what's on my list. And you don't know because you don't know my house, you don't know when it was built, you don't know what's important to get done there and what you let slide. You don't know what I'm good at. I'm pretty good at painting. But wallpapering, I'm pretty good at landscaping. Carpentry, forget it. You know, my miter joints are not real good. So my point is that I know what I'm good at, I know what I need, I know what needs to get done and what I need to ask somebody else to do for me because I'm on the ground, I'm there, I know. And I feel very much the same way about local political subdivisions, and as a general proposition, things are best done closest to the ground. One of the most difficult things that I have found as a legislator so far is striking that balance between things that are best done at a state level and things that are best done on the local level. Sometimes there are really seriously competing issues that go on there, okay? And it's a very difficult task sometimes to strike the right balance where they're done properly and everybody's interests are met as best they can. And we try very hard to do that, and I can tell you that the legislators are very conscious of that conflict. They're very conscious of the interests of the things that I'm talking about, the interest in getting things done on the ground. In my world, there's, as a lawyer, and Mr. Andre will certainly sympathize with me when I say this, but there's a rebuttable presumption that things should be done on a local level, and that includes the collection of taxes, okay? Centralizing, taking it up to the state level, may or may not be a good idea, but the presumption is it's better done at the local level. If I can be convinced by somebody that there are higher state interests, the pursuit and benefit of which are more important or tend to outweigh the local interests, then I'm willing to think about it and consider what's going on. I haven't heard those yet with respect to this particular proposal on taxes, quite frankly. But I'm sure that those who support this proposition have a laundry list of things they think it would turn us all into the land of milk and honey. We'll see. I like to make decisions on the basis of fact as opposed to the basis of just kind of a gut emotion. I noticed from the resolution that was passed and that I've looked at that it seemed to me many of the concerns that were expressed related to really nuts and bolts aspects of collecting taxes and making use of them. Things like enforcing your tax ordinances and the speed with which taxes would be collected and the speed with which they would be received and the ability to administer where the money goes and how fast it goes there. Those are all, to me, absolutely legitimate, fundamental concerns that any regime to take tax collection to the state level would have to address. And if they didn't address them, I would be against it, particularly. If they didn't address those concerns that you've expressed, I would be against it. What I oftentimes have found so far is that what's sometimes put out there as a grand proposal to have municipal or local taxes collected by the state government across the board doesn't come out that way. I mean, there are ways to skin the cat so as to account for the interests of a place like Middlefield and understand that a place like Cleveland is something else again. And I'm not above the prospect of somehow a hybrid that's somewhere in between where you folks are and where the city of Cleveland or the city of Lakewood or the city of Mentor might be. So, all of which is a long way of saying I'm eager to see what comes down the pike in the way of a proposal. The rebuttable presumption to me is that it's best left to the local level under all circumstances. If somebody has an idea or a reason why it's critical to the advancement of the interests of the state of Ohio and it's going to make Ohio a better place to live and work and raise a family, to do it on a centralized basis, I'm willing to listen to that. But I suspect what comes out of that process at the end of the day is some kind of a hybrid that recognizes for a city like, or a village like Middlefield, that doesn't make any sense. For a village like, or for a city like Columbus, maybe it makes a little sense, okay? And that's basically where I stand on that. As far as reducing the number of council people, number of people eligible to sit on council, I haven't heard a whisper or an uttered word from anybody as to what the rationale for that is. I mean, how somebody, me, sometimes I find myself these days talking about they do this, they do that. Now it's me, and I have to be careful. But how I come off telling you folks how many people should be on your council is beyond me. I don't understand. And I haven't heard anybody suggest a word as to why it's a good idea or what object it's intended to serve. Some nanny down there might think, I suppose, well, we have to help the local governments reduce their costs by, reducing the number of council people or something like that. It's like me deciding whether I'm going to build those bookshelves or I'm gonna hire a carpenter to build those bookshelves, all right? I know how best to spend my money, thank you very much. And I don't need somebody else telling me how to do it. At the same token, I don't see where anybody here needs somebody from Columbus telling them how many people to sit on their village council. Now, that's a statement born in part of ignorance. Forgive me for pointing the ignorant finger at myself. But I haven't heard anybody explain to me what the incentive is for that, or what the interest for it, or what possible good somebody somewhere thinks will come of that. I don't know. But it's a decision that to me is best made on the ground by the people who are most directly affected by it and who most assuredly know what's best for them in terms of how they're governed on the local level. I hope that has, in some respects or another, answered your questions. I don't either, and I haven't heard it. And as I say, to me, it strikes me as it's illogical. I mean, maybe somebody has heard somebody offer an explanation as to why it would be a good idea or why it's important or why. Again, fundamentally, somebody or some group of people, me, somebody, I live up in Munson Township. I don't even know that, why should somebody in Munson Township be telling me how many people you have on your council? If somebody from Munson, or somebody from Clarendon, or somebody from Burton shouldn't be telling you, why should somebody from Columbus? I don't understand. Or, try another analogy. How about somebody from Washington? How about Barack Obama issues an executive order from Washington that says, how many state senators can we have in Ohio? Doesn't make any sense. And I analogize it to the mountain. So now, I hate to think of the prospect that maybe the prospects of an executive order from Barack Obama are maybe more likely than the prospects of legislation from Columbus, but God, I hope not. But it wouldn't surprise me. I'm happy, Your Honor, in any capacity you wish to either respond to any comments or questions that anybody on council has or in your audience. I apologize for not knowing exactly how your meetings run, but I'm at your disposal for as long as I can stay and for as long as you can stand it.
I have a question now. Has the bill been introduced to turn collection of income tax over to the state, or is it just something that's being discussed and a bill will be introduced?
I believe it's something that's being discussed.
Okay, so there is no bill that's actually been before the
I
legislature.
think it has a House bill number, doesn't it?
I don't think it has a House bill number. I don't think it's been legislation yet. It's just some that's been brought up. It was brought up last fall, and now it's come back to the front of discussion again.
And I think the governor has made some remarks about it.
Yeah, I think he says it's going to benefit business and that to be, to have the tax collection done down in Columbus as opposed to locally here. I can tell you that we used to contract with Central Collection Agency in Cleveland, and we have decided to take over our own collection. And we have a much better handle on local, collections and taxpayers than Central Collection ever had. And our revenues are up thanks to, local collection. And I'm concerned if it goes down to Columbus, that's even more removed than the Cleveland area. When we work with Central Collection Agency.
Let me suggest something to you, and this is sort of an object lesson for everybody, but you raised a very good point on a higher plane. Really. When I'm down there legislating, okay, I get people come before the committees that are considering these bills all the time, and they'll say, well, if you adopt this bill, this is what's going to happen. If you adopt that bill, this is what's going to happen. Oftentimes I'll hear legislation like this has been adopted in 25 states already. And I sit there and I listen to all of this as if this is supposed to mean anything, right? And I say to them, all right, well, it's been adopted in 25 states. Has it had any good positive effects in those 20? And they look at me like I'm from Jupiter, How about some facts? So your experience, see, this to me is the most effective evidence with respect to legislation that's being considered that anybody can offer. And if there's a bill ultimately that comes through, what I'll do is I'll reach out through the mayor to Middlefield to get testimony in front of a committee that expresses that experience, because that's powerful testimony, because it's factual, you see? It's not somebody supposing that things are better without centralized tax collection. It's somebody demonstrating it through their own experience that it is. And if, with your permission, Mr. Mayor, that's what I would hope to do. But that's very, very powerful stuff, at least for this senator. Facts, experiences, real stuff, instead of emotions and instead of hope this, hope that, let's try it and see if it works type of thing. You don't always have that type of thing, that type of experience, that type of evidence, if you will, to be presented to the committees. And if you don't have it, you don't have it. But where it's available, it's extremely important to bring it forth. And you would be doing the state of Ohio, the legislature, and of course Middlefield a great service if that type of testimony ultimately comes forward when it's needed.
I think a hybrid, we've talked about this earlier, I think a hybrid would be the solution. I think the operative word is city.
Yeah.
You know, we'd have to have someone here regardless, because we can watch it close enough that we do create extra revenue by making it efficient and participation of 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Or a metropolitan area that can discuss well this way, I'm sure it doesn't have a job.
Well, and I'll tell you, when I look at the list of administrative difficulties that you're all legitimately concerned about, you know, I say to myself, if somebody has this idea and they think all of those concerns can be addressed, and people like you can be satisfied that they're addressed, and everything becomes simply, it's transparent, it's just that you're rid of the administrative burden and the expense of doing it, and all of your, you know, concerns are addressed to your satisfaction. I don't believe in tilting at windmills. You know, if somebody's invented a better mousetrap, my God, well, let's buy it, right? But don't promise me. You know, show me that it works. Somebody will say, well, they do this in Nebraska, or they do it in Kentucky, or they do it someplace else. Okay, show me how it's had some positive impact. Just the fact that 15 other states have done it doesn't cut that mustard. You had a question, sir?
Yeah, I was looking at the bill you would introduced, I think it was the House Bill, Senate Bill 272.
Yes.
And I was wondering what were some of the reasons behind it, why you would want to issue a non-renewable license to a temporary resident.
Well, they're entitled to them already under the law, first of all. And this is a bill that basically creates a grace period. Here's what happens. Up in the nurseries up in Lake County, all right, they rely heavily upon Mexican labor. Why? Because they have there's a federal visa program for temporary labor to come up. These nurserymen are not allowed to hire temporary labor from any place until they're able to demonstrate that there's no domestic labor to do the work. And if you've ever worked on a nursery or worked around a nursery, I'm here to tell you, it is backbreaking, terrible work to do. And these folks up there have a very hard time finding the labor to do it domestically. So, if they qualify for this visa program, they engage workers from Mexico to come up to Ohio to do the seasonal labor, to dig the trees, to plant the trees, to prune the trees, to do all of the stuff that needs to be done up there. And then they go back to Mexico. Under that federal program, they're entitled to a non-renewable driver's license. Okay? Problem. In order to get the non-renewable driver's license, they have to have the valid visa, okay, which means there's no domestic workers available to do the work. And secondly, they have to be in the state of Ohio to go to the DMV. Well, they drive up from Mexico, see? And they leave Mexico, they come across the river, they drive up to Ohio. As soon as they cross the Ohio River, they're breaking the law because they're driving without a valid American driver's license. So this bill was intended to give them a week's time from the time they get their valid visa down in Mexico to get up to Ohio, sign their employment papers with their employer, and get to the DMV to get the non-renewable license they otherwise are entitled to. It's just to keep them from getting in jail between the time they cross the Ohio River and the time they get to Lake County. And what we've heard is that what has happened from time to time is that these people, you know, they don't drive as carefully maybe as they should, they speed, or somebody pulls them over for, changing lanes without a blinker, and boom, they don't have a valid American driver's license, they're taken to jail. And the employer up there, waiting to have these guys come up to do the nurseryman's work, he's gotta go get them out of jail, fork over the dough for bail, and it's an expense that these guys are seriously concerned about. So it's basically designed to help the nurserymen and ultimately other agricultural businesses in the state of Ohio to operate their, what a short window those folks have within which to make a buck. I mean, this is like if I remember, 80, 90-day window that they make 90% of their revenue in. This is an opportunity to ease their mind, facilitate their ability to do their business efficiently, and to grow it into the future. So they're not getting anything that the immigrant, foreign, temporary workers are not getting anything they're otherwise not already entitled to under law. We're just cutting a little slack, not so much for them as for the nurserymen who are good enough to employ them.
Are they also gonna be required to do a maneuverability test and also the written test to get that license, or?
I don't know. I don't know what the requirements are to get the license. I don't think they have to do that, so long as they have a valid driver's license from their country of origin.
How do we know that was even legal, the one they got?
I don't suppose it was good.
I mean, I think they should have to take that test just like we did.
Mm-hmm. Usually they're only here, these guys are only here for 80, 90 days.
It doesn't take long to cause an accident. There was just an issue in England not that long ago where somebody from the United States was over there driving on the wrong side of the road, because that's just what they were used to, and got killed. They had an accident.
Mm.
So I mean, those are things that I think we ought to be addressing in the law.
We'll look into that.
Okay.
See, what exactly paces are they put through in order to get that temporary operator's license?
Okay, yeah, because I don't think we should just be handing it out just because they say they want it.
And at the same time, you'll appreciate, I'm sure, that we don't want to necessarily, once these fellows are in the state of Ohio to do the job that they're hired to do, we don't want them spending 3 weeks out of the 80 or 90 days they have to do the job for the nurseryman, encumbered and able to operate or function because they have to follow too many regulations, arbitrary regulations or rules. I'll look into it and
Well,
see that.
the rest of us have to follow those.
Yes, I understand.
And we're residents.
Yes, you are. More than residents, you're citizens.
Quick question for you. I've always been curious about that kind of a situation where, I think Lake County has about an 8% unemployment rate, something like that, 8.9. So you got people out of work, and then you have employers that need workers, but nobody wants to do it because it's backbreaking.
Yep.
But meanwhile, we're paying welfare or whatnot for those unemployment money to these people. Instead of trying to get foreign people driver's license to be able to work there, is there any way that our legislature can tell these people that are unemployed, that, hey, these jobs are available, we're paying you to be unemployed right now, this is a job that's available. I mean, I think that would be better use of our taxpayers' money, so to speak. Is that something that's even possible to do?
Well, I like to think that anything's possible, but,
It just seems odd that.
it makes perfect sense. No, I understand perfectly.
These jobs are available.
And it makes perfect sense. What you will hear, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but what you will hear is, you can't force somebody to do something that they don't want to do. That's slavery, or that's indentured servitude, whatever it is. And, it's a good idea, but the opposition to that would probably be such that it's unlikely that it would ever become part of the law, just to be perfectly candid with you. It's sort of like, requiring people who receive, unemployment benefits or welfare benefits to take a drug test. Seems like a perfectly sound idea, but the screaming and yelling you get from the other half of the population is that it's a compelled form of prejudicial behavior that really shouldn't be tolerated in law. There's a lot of rub, and part of the frustration is the rub between the good and the achievable, and sometimes we're better served to go with the achievable, even though we sacrifice some of the good, because the good is just not achievable. And Sometimes a half a loaf is better than others, but realistically, I doubt that kind of legislation would